fun. All right, so we're ready to go. I know people will start popping in probably. If not, that's okay. So I hope you all have this photo reference that we're going to use. And I turn my paper horizontal because I'd like to have it well fit into my camera. And I'm recording this session and we will share the recording. So if you miss anything, or if you really want to have a little refresh, you'll be able to play it at your own time. So this photo reference, as you can notice, the reason why I picked it is, first, it has pretty much everything. It has sky, it has water, and it really creates a beautiful sense of depth from this water being so close to us, and also has some architecture. And as you can see, it's very nice, creates this nice triangle almost, and then we have this whole dark area in the front. So we'll be very, very careful of following this beautiful composition. So if you'd like, we can just very roughly sketch it. And again, pick your horizon line or where the vintage point is going to be. Never completely in the middle. I'm gonna just bring it down a little bit. Let's think for a second. How about slightly above the center? Because we have this amazing water, so I want to have enough space to paint this water. So very, very roughly, just indicate where your horizon line is. And I'm just going to be checking the cameras from time to time, so excuse me if I pop my head somewhere here and there. But so it doesn't matter if you're picking horizontal or vertical, just roughly follow this silhouette here, you know, of the architecture, and it's going to go up, and I'm going to crop it right there. And if you're using a vertical format, probably it won't be cropped and it will probably be going somewhere else. So I'm going to have this nice house right there, very, very roughly again. So how we approach this whole sketching, we pick the big shapes again. We are looking at the larger shapes. I'm going to indicate probably how my darker area in the water is going to be. So squint your eye, it's going to be going this way. And then we have a very colorful shadow going that way, almost like a diagonal. And then another set of shadow, just very, very roughly, so we don't lose track of what's what. And I'm going to...
Is it possible to make your lines a little bit darker? Maybe it's just me.
Is it too light? Yeah, maybe it's too light.
I can't see them either.
Oh, really? Okay. How about if I just bring it up a bit close to the camera? Can you see or no? Okay. You know what? Because if I make it darker, it's going to get too dark. So I'm going to press a little bit harder. Okay. So here's my horizon. Can you see this? Here is the...
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
That's better. Okay. So here is that little house that I mentioned. Okay, so here is another one going up here, and then a little bit of another one. Okay. So just very roughly sketch these houses that are in the front. They'll be interesting, kind of almost like a focal point. Okay. Here is the tower, is going to be somewhere here, and the beautiful building in the back. And a silhouette, just basically sketch out very roughly this silhouette of a little village that we're seeing. Not too much detail, and because I'm painting horizontal, I kind of stretched it out a little bit, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to add a bunch of houses, and you'll see it's going to be very loose and again in our usual style. So here's probably going to be a tree, maybe another tower I see over here. Beautiful rooftop, and in the background, okay, so this is what I was saying about the shadow here. So it's going to be dark somewhere here. This part over here will be color, and we have a mountain, some very faded looking silhouette of a mountain. Okay, again, not literal. You can eliminate some of what you see. We don't have to, you know, paint that leaf in the very front. It's definitely not necessary, but up to you, really. You can just pick and choose. So I'm ready to paint. And again, you can either spray with your spray bottle, your whole paper with water, or use a very, very large brush, like in this case here. So I'm going to have my paper towel in one hand, and we're going to start painting from top going down, basically. And we're still going to water the whole paper. Water. I just want to make sure that I'm not in the way of the cameras. Okay, so just very generously throw some water or spray it. Before we go to the bottom, I'm going to start now painting the sky. And I'm going to use this very interesting color. I will tell you, it's a turquoise blue from Holbein. It's really great. It's a bit opaque for a watercolor, but it's really vibrant. So I'm not going to use I'll mix it with my usual ultramarine, but how about use this turquoise? And you don't have to use the turquoise. You can use any color you want, but I'm just going to very quickly start putting some nice bright tones right here and create a little bit of a gradient, more intense at the top, and it gets lighter as we go down. So I'm just going to maybe dab some ultramarine. That's a bit too strong, so I'm going to wipe it now with my paper towel. And you can create, you know, remember these little streaks of light that we do, although we don't see them in the painting. Why not have those? So I'm going to have some now, use this ultramarine blue for the background, and paint it very softly, like wet on wet, because it's the farthest, it is far away, so it doesn't have to be very, very sharp, and that's how we create sense of depth. So I'm gonna dab a bit of ultramarine up there, and again, maybe have something like that. And we can take a brush and maybe lift some areas to create sense of clouds. Soft, very softly, just lift a bit. Okay, and then we're going to start going down to the rest. Now take your nice big brush, but with a tip that has a nice tip, and mix a cool tone. Let's take that same color that we use, and remember, limited palette, so we're not going to use too many colors. I like this turquoise, and I will introduce it a bit at the bottom, but for now, let's paint the silhouette. And I'm going to start left to right, and I will mix my ultramarine with burnt raw sienna. This is raw sienna to kind of create this cool tone. I don't know if you see it. I'm mixing it right here. You will see it on the video eventually, but okay, let's just cool it off a little bit. Okay, and very, very again with our brush moving in all kinds of direction, try to not to make it too dark because this is far away, so we don't want it to be so to have a high contrast in that area. Right here I'm gonna just add a few, and just one color. Don't worry about trees or sides and what's what. Really just using this one color, we're going to create this nice silhouette in the very back. And you can leave some white of where the light side of the house is, just a little bit of white. And here in this is a church, I don't know, it's some sort of an interesting architecture. We're gonna again paint only the one side, the shadow side. And it's still wet, everything is really wet on my paper, so I'm just moving along. And it does look soft, so that is the whole point, because it's far away, we don't want it to just takes too much to grab the whole attention. We're going to focus on our beautiful water reflection and maybe the houses on the right. Okay, so just keep going. Don't be afraid to move your brush in any direction, have interesting brush strokes. So for now, even have some dry brush technique here and there, just to create some interest. And we will go back and add some more detail, but for now we again painting the large shapes, and that's what's important, large shapes. And then the details are last. So right now I'm just following this and very quickly adding some more rooftops. Maybe there is a tree, okay, and I will add this color, cool tone, maybe warm it up a little bit more with some burnt sienna and some of this quinacridone magenta to kind of create a bit of a warmer brown, but not too warm. So I will introduce this color right here, and I really like it in combination with the blue, so we'll introduce it also a little bit in that background right here. So, and again, you can come up with interesting shape. This is the time when you can have a lot of fun, but as you can see, we're just painting top to bottom today and following this nice little silhouette. Okay, and I'll just run with clean water with a big brush right here at the bottom to kind of soften that edge at the bottom. See how I'm just running clean water underneath, and that softens that edge because it's so far away. I don't want it to be so obvious, and besides we will paint reflections, so we'll go back to it. Now we're going to warm up a bit with our palette. Just grab some red and yellow, just mix and grab some of that same tone we use, and we're just warming up a little bit. Here's probably some trees. I have this very interesting color called Indian yellow. You may have used it, or you may have seen it. It's really nice and intense, very warm, almost close to orange, but so I've been using it lately. It's really interesting. So it goes very well with this ultramarine, this whole palette. So let's put a little bit here, and now we're painting the trees. Okay, so and as we move to the houses on the right, we're going to use warmer tones. That's how we create objects to appear closer to us, by using warmer colors and higher contrast. So just one big strokes. You can go the whole area, you can just paint it with this tone. Okay, don't worry. I mean, leave some of the white. Maybe this house can have some white areas, specifically over here, because it seems like it's really well lit. Now I will take a bit of yellow very lightly and maybe run right here on top of these houses, because it will connect both sides of my paintings really nicely. It creates also sense of warmth and light. Yellow is a great color to give sense of light to your painting. So with a clean white big brush, I just kind of wet it and go across. And leave it at that, not too many brush strokes. So here I will leave this white. So I'm mixing again this Indian yellow, which is very intense really. And I will introduce it over here. You can cool it off a bit with ultramarine. It may get a bit green, but that's okay. Dry brush technique here. Again, darker for the rooftops. I'm just checking if things are recording. Yes, everything is good. And remember, we're just painting nice, big, soft blobs right now. And it's all the medium value. Don't worry about the darks or the details. We will add those later. Just big, soft batches of color. Shapes, rather. What am I saying? Sometimes when I paint, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, so here we go, just warming it up, and maybe a little bit of this quinacridone magenta, which I really like. It's a cool red. It's pink. Pink is actually a cool red, so it creates very, very nice tones. And we can just throw this here and there. And we will come back to these houses a little bit later when they're dry. Just gonna add, make sure there is unity, they're similar in tone. You can lift some areas, like for example here there's something going on. Maybe it's some sort of edge. We can lift, just put clean water and just lift it with your brush. Okay, and more, there's the silhouette here in the back. Don't worry if you're not completely precise. I would encourage you to kind of have the sketchy movement of your hand. Don't be so worried about being completely exactly drawing within the line. So we just, dab over here, things are coming up. And again, with clean water, some edges could be softened. So edges are everything in watercolor. This is pretty much one of the most important parts, values and edges. We can paint with only two colors, but if we don't have, edges, correct edges, soft, and the values, we will have a very kind of not quite complete painting. So I'm softening this edge right here just the way I did it to the other houses. I'm just throwing some clean water at the very bottom to soften this edge. And now we're going to have fun with our reflection. Okay, so again, and I will teach you how to paint water. Let's water first our paper, the whole bottom part, like everywhere. So theoretically, how we paint water is wet on wet. We start wet on wet. So on a very wet paper, we're going to put one medium value in the shape of that main reflection in the very front. So I will mix again this turquoise that I like, but it's very light. And I'm going to introduce some phthalo blue now because I want to make it more intense, just like in the picture. So I'm going to get this phthalo blue. I'm not going to make it, maybe a little bit of indigo to kind of darken it a bit. And while everything is still wet, oops, sorry, I'm shaking the camera. Okay, so while it's still wet, just very bold, be very bold, no fear at all. Mix a bunch of blues there with some indigo and go right away and have this dark tone right here. Now only at the bottom, and then slowly we're gonna kind of lighten it up and have a medium value. And try to have a dry brush if you can, just very lightly, just leave some areas white, but we're going to have this nice medium value right here of this blue tone. And I'm going to extend it here, maybe have a dry brush. Okay. So everything is still wet, we did that. Now I'm going to take some nice, I hope you have this interesting gradient going dark at the bottom and slightly lightening it up, and your paper should be very wet. And now I'm still painting with my big brush. I'm gonna paint a warmer shadow over here, but with just one big brush. Again, big things. I'm going to introduce the details later. So again, getting some of my yellow and this red, we're gonna mix it. Phthalo blue is so intense that it's mixing with everything and it's creating a little bit of a green. So here, if you can kind of create a bit of a dry brush technique and go around just very lightly. And now we will start painting our reflection. I'm taking a bigger brush. I'm sorry, before we paint, all the details. Now, we have everything medium value, so I just want to introduce you. Now we are going to do darker value. So on top of this medium value that we have in the water, we're going to mix the darker value while everything is still very wet. So I'm mixing, I'm using indigo. If you have gray or black, just mix it with some blue and you're going to get a darker value. And we're going to create these now little wave that we see over there. But make sure everything is still wet because we want this softer look, very softer look on the water. Maybe just a few lines here, and the lines are gonna get lighter as we go back. And again, softer, but still, and thinner, because that's how we create sense of distance. I'm just making here some lines. So notice these darks. Now I'm gonna mix a similar dark, but with a warmer value on the left. I know it sounds confusing, but it should be medium value, all wet, and then the darker value on the very top, and just some accents, like we're creating waves basically. So here I'm going to mix a nice dark tone for this side, and just throw it, see how it's all wet, and it creates some very, very nice little effects. Just move your brush. Don't worry if it's not exactly the same, but the brush stroke should be more intense closer to us and get softer and lighter as we move away. So I'm just mixing a whole bunch of tones. I want it to be warmer, dark. So here we have this indigo, and I'm mixing it with the quinacridone magenta and a little bit of burnt sienna. So that creates a nice warm tone. And here we have this house over here, and have some vertical strokes and horizontal at the same time. Here we have we're going to have probably a door. So see very quickly, have some vertical. I know water can be tricky, but it's not if you understand what exactly you want to achieve. So again, you can have some dry brush kind of coming in a bit here. So basically it's vertical lines and horizontal going across. So when everything is still wet, I'm gonna break these horizontal a little bit, but make sure they're not too wide, they're thinner, and get wider as we come closer to the bottom. This way we have some more perspective and a sense of depth. So here we have, you know, maybe something going on here. We shouldn't be so literal. Again, I'm gonna soften this edge because water shouldn't be so harsh. And now I'm gonna mix another tone. That's obviously it's a reflection from the houses. So whatever color you use for that house is nice if it's reflected below. And again, vertical strokes while everything is still wet. It can go really low. And again, soften some. I'm introducing some more of this orange, I guess. This is the house. So if this house above, whatever you have above, that's what should be reflecting again. And if it has, let's say, something like a tree, I want to show this. And I don't want to introduce too many colors, so I tend to shy away from green if I'm using too much blue. So I'm just gonna use blue here for this part over here. There, my camera turned off. Of course, I don't know. I have to make sure my setting is right. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure I'm pressing the right button. Okay, so it's this. Okay, so we're good. The other one is also recording, and there's some bunch of wires coming in the picture. It's never perfect, right? That's why it's so much fun, because it's never perfect. So make sure that your paper is still very wet while you're doing this. And again, I'll kind of put clean water across and smaller brush strokes as we go farther away and break these verticals a little bit. That's how we create a sense of water without being too literal of what's going on over there. And oh, we forgot to do our favorite. So with very clean water, hopefully everything is still wet, we can just tap. It's gonna create some nice little blooms and that also gives a nice sense of water. So with just with clean water, that's it, these little taps are creating these booms. Not too much, again, we don't want to overdo it. Okay, so this thing is in the way. What time do we have? Oh, we have plenty of time, we have a whole hour. Alright, so I just want to make sure that this cable is not popping in. Okay. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions. Now we're moving to the left, and again we're going to repeat the same technique, slightly lighter, not as intense, because this reflection again is farther away. But again, the same thing, these houses are casting reflection, and we're doing vertical brush strokes, and we're breaking them with clean water horizontally. And make sure that you soften again, not very harsh edges. And if your paper is dry, like in my case, just put some clean water on top. And now we're going to put some more colors. Okay, so here we have again the vertical, similar tones, whatever tone color you use for the silhouette of the houses, use the same color, and just nice vertical brush strokes, wet on wet. And this tall building in the back can go real low, like all the way down to here. Can be very long. Some more here, some more there. Again, grab some of the yellow, of course. Some yellow should be showing. Vertical. Because we have so much yellow here, let's introduce some of the yellow over here too as well. And again, kill some of your edges right there. And now, again, same technique. I'm going to lift some horizontal. Clean brush, dry it with your paper towel, and we're just lifting. Make sure your lines, horizontal lines, are again not the same, and the further we go, the smaller they get, the thinner they are. Again, following our perspective. Okay. And that creates a nice soft feeling to the whole painting. Now this is just our medium value, so believe it or not, all we did right now is just placing our medium values. Now we're going to start introducing our dark values and adding detail at the same time. So let's tackle this reflection in the water first, and I want you to be very brave, like try to be really brave. Mix dark tones. So I'm using indigo and phthalo, some really nice tone. Indigo. I should get wireless microphone. I apologize if my wires are popping into the picture. Alright, so we have indigo and phthalo, and it's a really nice dark tone, and we're going to very boldly create a few dark lines right here in the front, because this is going to create again sense of depth. So we should have light, we should have medium, and now introducing the dark. And the dark, all these dark lines could be dry brush, like dry brush technique on top of this softness. So that gives even more sense of water. And the lines they don't have to be completely straight. They could be just wiggly a little bit. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to do here. See how it's very dry. My brush is really dry, and moving my brush horizontally, oops, I can just swipe it through. And create a bit of a kind of a movement right on top. Okay, so we keep going, and here, and again, don't worry about what it is over there. We are creating a picture that's believable. So again, very dark in the front. And as you can see, I was very bold with my brush strokes. Don't worry too much about, oh, is it exact? Is it exactly the same? Am I making a mistake? You're not making a mistake. There are no mistakes in watercolor. It's just fun, fun, fun. And I really want to make this very dark here in the front. So I'm going to take my big wide brush right here. And that's going to create really, maybe going a bit in this direction, a nice strong sense of depth. Again, maybe a few lines, smaller lines, dry brush technique, and then no more lines as we go farther, because nothing is very sharp when we look, and things far away get softer and start disappearing. You can maybe have a few more lines, but again, they shouldn't be so dark. And again, some quiet. We need to have some quiet areas. Alright, and now we're going to introduce some dark tones on the right side, where it's the warmer reflection, and I will mix burnt sienna with some indigo and a burnt sienna. Again, not much water, a nice heavy paint and pigment, and again, a watercolor dries so light that we can use a ton of paint and still it's gonna look real light. I mean, it's relatively light, so don't be afraid. So I'm just gonna go and paint very freely, like use your interpretation, but kind of horizontally. I will paint some wiggly lines with this dark tone right on top, and it could be a dry brush, sort of like this, very sketchy, because stuff is happening here. And the brush strokes are gonna be wider as I come forward, again to reinforce that sense of perspective. And don't be discouraged if your very first water or the 10th water doesn't look exactly right. Just practice, just water on a separate sketch pad. Practice just painting water. Again, wet on wet, big blobs of medium value, and while it's still wet, a little bit darker value, and the dark cast can go later as a dry brush on top of it. And then again, reflection is vertical brush strokes with some horizontal going across. So here again, I'm gonna make darker tones with my dry brush technique and introduce some more dark tones over here. Because there are some reflections and some interesting things happening. And again, you can maybe spatter a little bit, but not too much. Now we don't want to overdo the spatter technique, so just a little bit. Now this brown tone that we introduced, I want to pop it also in the front of the blue somewhere where the blue is. I always like to introduce whatever color I have. I want to show it in other areas as well. So maybe I can have some darker lines in the very front, but make sure they're wider. And again, one stroke and that's it, not too many, because then the paper is gonna look overdone and really looks very worn out. You don't want that. All right, so as if not, your painting should be looking as if it's just very spontaneous, as if it's not touched by a human hand really, so nobody was laboring over. So again, I'm taking my darker tones and I'm gonna start adding some details in those houses. Now we can breathe, right? Okay. Yeah, those reflections were so scary. So here we're going to have, maybe I'll take a smaller brush. Let's get a smaller brush. That's not a very small brush, but it has a nice tip. A very nice tip. So again, dark, indigo, burnt sienna. And we're just adding and having fun. A little bit of a door. Move your brush in any direction. Make sure it's energetic. It's okay if it's not correct. I know there are two doors. Just a little dots here, maybe a bit darker over there. Now we're going to indicate some, maybe some windows. I know there are no windows over there, but it kind of feels a bit empty, so maybe just a bit, couple of dots here. We're going to make a little shadow. My cat is trying to get into the painting too. Alright, so let's see what's happening here. Alright, so just maybe a couple of lines, just windows. Then we have a bit of dark over here. Move your brush again very freely, almost vertical. Just hold it almost vertically and have a nice tip and start just popping little things. Don't outline anything, just your brush stroke should be the one that's determining things. So here we have a bunch of windows and move it horizontally. Okay, and again, you can soften some areas. Obviously these elements are far away, so we can just soften them a bit. Some of the, just not all. And again, a suggestion, a little bit of a window here, a suggestion of a window. And in those little village scenes, maybe not in this one, but generally, I love painting things that are from my imagination, like little antennas, maybe some chimney. That does kind of create a lot of interesting movement and more energy and more excitement. Makes the painting more interesting, really. But we will do this last with our rigger brush. Right now, we're just going with the darks. Okay, everything is going okay with the recording. Here we have a couple of windows. A little bit of dark windows here on this side as well, and as we go farther away things are smaller and thinner. We are more delicate now. We're just basically adding a lot more detail here. We can add some horizontal lines of shadow, shaded areas. Now this village, okay, so this house has probably a balcony. We're not going to go into the architectural detail, but just indicate maybe a shape right here. That's my cat. If you guys hear something, That is the cat trying to get into the painting. Okay, so I'm just lifting a bit. I don't want to lose my white and the light, so not too much. Okay, note to self, get wireless microphone. Alright, so we're gonna have a couple more windows here. And windows are just little dabs kind of with the side of your brush. And if they're in perspective, they're kind of looking like lines rather. So now we're adding some more detail here. I know that there is a house over there, so maybe a darker shape. And again, if I painted this door here, I'd like this to be reflected. So I'm gonna do a bit of vertical right there. So this house obviously is touching the water, but not quite. I'm sure there's something in front of it. I just want to make sure that it's not floating in the water. There's something like a little edge to be more realistic. I'll add it later with my other brush. So now we keep going with our darks. And now this whole dark burned sienna here mixed with a bit of indigo, it's gonna create also some nice lines right here. Again, horizontal dry brush. We don't want to overdo it too much because that's far in the distance. I'm just introducing a few more darks right there. So just little vertical brush strokes again. Because in my case this area looks really light, so I don't want it to be too light. So I'm going to introduce some of this dark tones and have just vertical brush strokes. And you can now rake it by going horizontally with just clean water. That's going to create some sense of water. Again, we don't want to overdo this too much. Again, since it's so far, I may want to just tone it down a bit. So here we go. In some area that is just quiet. Okay. Now I see here in my case this is kind of very light and almost nothing is happening. You can have a nice light, a little bit of a light blue, and just very gently give some more structure of this water a little bit. But it's not as dark as what we did in the very front. Okay. So now we're going to create some more detail where the houses are. Again, we're going to add more windows, just little dots. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to use my rigger brush because it has some nice tip and it's hard to control. Again, it will create some nice interesting lines. So I'm getting some dark tones here and a little windows, a little line, maybe there's some horizontals, just very free, kind of in a very sketchy kind of way. Move your brush. Just holding it vertically will force you to be very sketchy and not so precise. Just move it in all kinds of directions. So again, this is far away, you don't see exactly what it is. We squint our eye and that's how we get an impression of what's going on over there. We don't look with a magnifying glass. And here I'm going to start adding a few chimney that I mentioned to you. Sometimes these add something, some little vertical lines. They do add some interesting detail and give a more of a sense of a house, even if they don't have any over there. Okay, so maybe there's some dark area here, maybe just create some sketchy, nice little shapes and lines. Now we can do a few lines everywhere. Another chimney I'm going to add, and here is another one. And sometimes antennas are great, but of course we don't want to be too precise with the antennas. Just maybe a little thin vertical line does create a nice interesting sense of something happening, especially for a little village scene like that. I'm going to add this chimney, even though I don't see it. Just want to make this look interesting. And again, with this very dark tone, I'm moving here to my foreground and maybe have some lines. To add some interest. I'm just adding maybe a grid, like a fence. We don't know what it is. I don't see it over there, but it needs it. I felt like it needs something interesting happening over there. So it's not just shapes, color, dots. Maybe something more, something different. And it's okay if some shapes disappear, like as we can see some are just disappearing and not everything is outlined completely. We paint outside of any shapes, they're just soft everywhere. Maybe some brown windows over here, maybe something is going on, just sketch. So keep going with your details. And I'm going to, now that I'm looking at it, we keep adding little things. So I think it will be nice if we just add a bit of dark, little accents like that in the water. Just very dark. Again, make sure that those wiggles that you do with your brush are very quickly and free. Just super free. Alright, and now I'm sure if you painted vertically, you probably have this mountain for right behind the village. You can use the same color, whatever you use, that yellow, mix some cooler red, maybe tone it down a bit with blue, and let's add this. In my case, maybe it's not such a great idea, but I'm just going to add it just because. That probably should have been added way before I painted everything, but I'm just adding it. And it doesn't have to be anything distinct, just the shape. And I'm going to just lift some areas, make it look soft. How are we doing with time? Okay, so it's 7 o'clock almost. And we can just see how we created this little focal point with the yellow house right there on the left, and that's kind of the most intense color. If we are feeling brave, we can take this yellow color and kind of pop it as a reflection right here. Just a little bit of an accent. I'm just introducing a bit of color here. Now it feels that my painting is very heavy on the right and not much going on the left. So maybe that's because I chose to paint it horizontally. But in a case like this, you can improvise and, you know, add some more dark elements on the left. So I can maybe add some houses on the left using a darker tone, as long as it's not too warm. Just some more silhouettes over here. Nobody's gonna check and see what my photo looks like, really. So I'm gonna add it here because it felt as if it's just really empty and not quite balanced. So I'm adding a bit of a silhouette, maybe another one of these little nice cathedral type of structure that has beautiful silhouette. Okay, and it's all dark. I'm just adding it there to balance my painting a little bit. So yeah, as you can see, you can change your mind as you paint and change your picture. It all has to serve you. And that's the whole goal, making something that's beautiful to look at. I'm just using again my rigor and maybe having some bunch of lines. And you can really add a lot of detail if you'd like, as long as you just try to be delicate. Use a nice long hair thin brush, and you can be very careful and delicate with your details. Again, keeping the spontaneity, so moving the brush in every direction. To create movement in our artwork. Maybe that building has some interesting stuff going on over here. I'm just basically adding all these small brush strokes here and there to kind of make it more rich, just adding some more detail. Almost abstract in an abstract way. Since I added this dark area here, I'm just going to also add the reflection. And there shouldn't be a very sharp line between above ground and what's reflecting in the water. That should be very soft, that area. feel free to show me what you have and ask me any questions. If there is a problem area, we can always solve it. And remember, there's no ruined painting unless like somebody tore it up. I always tell my students, don't give up on your painting, even if it doesn't look quite all right in the first look. There's always a way to save it. And how we save paintings that have been either overworked, on we lost it, or we lost our whites, just take a very, very bright tone, like bright pigment, and mix it almost as an opaque color, and just give some punches to your painting, and it's going to revive it right away. It's like resuscitate it, basically.
I had one question.
Sure. Yes.
When I'm painting, I feel like when I go back to add the details, the painting is so wet that my details don't have a hard edge.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and it's okay if they don't have hard edge. You can just wait, or some people use hair dryer to dry their paper. Really, I hardly use it because mine kind of dries out quickly. But if you really want to add a detail that is more that's sharper, yeah, you need to wait for your paper to dry, or dry it with a hair dryer, or just use lots of pigment. Just make sure your paint has less water, almost no water, and just mix it super thick. And yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm just adding a little bit. Have your brush dancing around, really, that's what it is. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. That is my approach. I basically put my brush strokes, and then parts of it I wash out. I always joke around with my students and tell them this is like create and destroy. Basically creating a brush stroke and destroy part of it. We're not destroying the whole thing, but we're just putting it down, and then we're taking parts of it. So that is very interesting. That's almost key to watercolor, to this particular technique. And it gives you variation. I always say you shouldn't have more than 3 inches of the same brush stroke. It always should be broken up a bit, or have some other things going on. So here I'm just adding maybe some more line. It's nice to have a bit of something punchy in your painting. I know some artists are great with very subdued tones, and that's how they are, and their painting are fantastic. I personally feel that it's nice to have a bit of a zing. So I use this turquoise here that I have. I mentioned it to you. It's very nice. It's Holbein turquoise. It's almost opaque, and you can just use it to pop that accent here and there. Maybe even do a bit of a spatter. So now these are just finishing touches, thinking of what to do. Again, do the spatter sparingly, not too much. Let's not overdo it, but just a little bit. So maybe add a bit of this interesting turquoise. That's gonna make your painting from good to great. It's unexpected. It's usually something that's unexpected. The viewer is going to be like, oh, I see a little something turquoise here. Maybe that is, and takes their imagination somewhere. So it's just very sparingly, because that's called our accent color. And again, I'm going to kill some of it. Maybe pop it very delicately here and there, not everywhere, because we don't want to overdo it. Yeah, maybe we can pop it here in the water, right here where it touches this area. And you can pick any color as an accent color. You can have a little pink accent or something. But as long as it's not everywhere, just a little bit, just a little dot, 1, 2, 3. And again, think in terms of odd numbers. If you have a little dot of turquoise, make it to appear in 3 places or 5 places, not just 1, 2, but do 1, 2, 3. I mean, there is certain harmony and the aesthetics of odd numbers, specifically in our paintings. And again, you can close, almost frame it, thinking compositionally, with again another here. Just add some more tone. And I'm done with my painting. I don't want to overdo or add too much to it because it's very easy to go overboard. Let me know how you are guys doing with yours. Yes, somebody needs to tell me to stop. What do we have? 7:08. We have plenty of time. We have 20 more minutes. I think the details is really the easy part. It's kind of a fun part. It's like having your dessert. In the beginning, you have nice, big, splashy colors. Then we go into building different shapes and thinking more about structure and composition. But then the detail is just, okay, let's have some detail. And it's fun, fun, fun. And again, I use white sometimes. Not too much, but I almost always pop some white in my painting because, for example, I even have it right here. So just mix a nice thick, not too thin, because if it's thin, it's not gonna show, but very thick, even straight out of the bottle. You can just put some white spatter on your water right here in the foreground, and make sure it appears the spatter is like dots, not, you know, spatter, but mostly dots, like little dots. It does create some feeling of water and sparkles, almost as if it's a nice bright day. And you can create this feeling of light glaring by using a dry brush in your water, just dry brush technique, and these whites that it leaves almost create a sense of light. But you can also spatter some of this white, and maybe over here I think I need a couple of, again, use it sparingly, don't overdo it. And it's nice to practice. You can practice. This painting can have so many different looks. And if you've lost some of the white, you can, with a dry brush and white, just add a bit of, you know, a squiggle like that. And that's it, not too much, because we don't want to use too much white. But if we just lost some of these light areas here, you can do, you know, 1, 2 little dots. You know, I'd rather just spatter. But again, simplicity, less is more. I may have complicated that water a little bit too much. Generally, if you feel like something looks too much, too complicated, just take your big brush, get a lot of color and simplify. Even though it doesn't look like my photo, I would like to actually simplify this area and see. I'm just going to introduce this dark tone right here. It may look a bit too dark, but I need to really simplify this a little bit. And it will create a sense of depth, since it's so dark here in the front. Okay, I created a bit of a problem area. So to just fix a problem area, just again, punch it with a heavy color, and it immediately is going to freshen it up. And that's it. 1, 2 strokes, and it's done. As you notice, the mountain, how it's darker on the top and it gets lighter, and that gives this feeling of fog, like there is a fog right at the bottom. So don't go dark all the way down. Generally, as I mentioned, I will have my paper actually at an incline, a bit of a 15-degree maybe angle. But now for the sake of our painting, it's nice so you can see it. It's horizontal, but it would be nice if it's a bit at an angle, so paint and water can drip a little bit, and it adds even more interest and more interesting effects. So this dark dot I popped there creates some sense of, yeah, maybe there are some objects that are casting a shadow there, so that creates a little bit more interest and depth again. But don't be afraid to paint very dark and very intense. Use your full capacity of your paint and the pigment. Don't over dilute it with water. As you can see how things are just drying definitely much lighter. It's nice to have nice light area and nice dark area. Basically having a range in our values. That's what makes a nice painting. Here I'm just adding a bit of a little more details maybe. And sometimes in scenes like this, although I don't see it, but it's nice to add a few birds. And how we paint birds, it's almost like a little mark of your very thin brush, regular brush, never a V, you know, like how we used to do it in kindergarten. Just a very nice little blue medium value and kind of a little ding, a little zing here. Never too, the distance between them shouldn't be the same. Maybe some are closer. That's also create nice feeling of something going on. It immediately adds some more life to your painting. I wouldn't worry about that leaf in the front. To tell you frankly, it's a bit too much. It's not gonna look that great, so I'm just taking it out. But yeah, maybe a little, something like a little mark of some birds. You can have, you know, little dots. The water is never perfect. There are all kinds of things that you see, but we don't want to overdo the water. Just like I did a little bit here to the right, so I'm trying to be careful. So feel free to show me what you have. We have 15 more minutes, and we've recorded this whole session so you can see. And I will share. I have a YouTube channel with at least maybe about 10 videos there of portraits, of also landscapes. I don't know if I have a landscape. I think I have a floral but I'll share it with you. You're more than welcome to see it. Just type up my name, you'll pop.
Here's mine if you want to see it.
Let me see. This is Jill. Okay, very nice. Look at that. So yes, perfect. You created the sense of depth with the dark in the front, and it's getting lighter as you go. Maybe a little bit more darker, not too dark, but verticals on the whole silhouette here in the city in the back. Maybe a few more, maybe, and kind of connect the both parts. Probably a little bit brighter on the houses on the right. Just big bold strokes, but your water looks fantastic. Looks really great. I love it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, anyone? All right, we have, that's Dini, yeah. That's beautiful. Look at that. That's fantastic. Yes. See how nice it goes all the way. It has a fantastic sense of depth. I love those houses. Yes, I know you're a lot more realistic, but it looks fabulous. And everybody has their own different approach. Some are more tight, some use different colors, more muted, and they all look fabulous. Yes. Amazing, amazing. Great work, great work. Oh, this camera keeps turning off. Anyway, we are done anyway, but yeah, I'd love to see what you guys have. I'm trying to see what I'm pressing. I'm pressing something.
You guys are almost as quiet as the tea.
I know. Oh my goodness.
Concentrating.
Concentrating, yes, everybody's concentrating.
It's been real fun, really relaxing for me.
I know. I hope I'm not putting you to sleep, because sometimes I know I'm like talking slowly. I try not to talk too fast.
Not at all. So anyway, some of you, I think, got into the intro to portraits,
Oh yeah.
watercolor portraits. I noticed that the wait list on that one is longer
Oh.
than the number of people we let. There's like 14 people on that wait list.
Wow.
Just so you know.
That's
The
awesome.
word's getting out.
The word's getting out. That's good. Yeah.
She has also agreed to do, it would be a Friday early afternoon in April. You won't be able to see these yet, but Lyudmila's going to do watercolor florals. These won't be
Oh, that's fun.
published until like February 18th or 20th, somewhere in there. But she said, oh, let's do watercolor florals. I'm like, okay, that feels fun.
Yeah.
You guys just by being here, you're getting that foreshadowing of what's to come in April. So anyway, thank y'all very much.
Yeah, florals. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. You've been an incredible class. Feel free to email me with any of your paintings, ask me questions. I will give you personal critique if you need to. But yeah, portraits are great. I actually have a formula now for the portraits. I know people keep asking me about formulas, and I always say, it's hard. It's hard because it's very intuitive. But for the portraits, I came up with a formula because they're hard. They're hard. So it's nice to have
That's
something.
That's a little sneak preview right there.
There you go. Right.
Hey, anybody else got any questions? You know, you're always welcome to email me with questions too. If I
Yes.
don't know the answer, I'll call Lyudmila.
Yes, absolutely.
Lyudmila, can you please tell me?
Yes, either way, coordinate with either one. Mhm.
Yeah. I would like to know the links to the other videos that you mentioned. I didn't hear. You know what I'm talking about, Jewel?
Well, I will get, if Lyudmila sends it to me, I will share it with you guys. So
Okay.
Lyudmila, if you'll send the
Yeah.
link to
Mhm.
the other videos you mentioned, your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Can they just go in YouTube and search for
Lyudmila Tomova. Yeah, it's just Lyudmila Tomova, and you'll find me on YouTube. They're time lapses. They're time lapses. They're not really paint along slow, so you're gonna see the whole process. And the reason why I do time lapse is because people have no patience really, unless they're in a class to kind of follow a video, unless they're doing an actual session. That's why I have these, but it's very clear of what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again.
There you go. And yay,
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.
we still have 8 minutes, but yeah, keep painting. Yeah. We'll be doing portraits. I'll send